Allô, Nissan? Hey, grosse tempête, hein?
Hey, Karine, oui, je sais, les vilains bonhommes de neige sont de retour.
Mais avec le Nissan Rogue à traction intégrale, c'est pas stressant.
Exact, il est conçu et testé pour nos hivers. Oh, Karine, il y a un bonhomme dans le Rogue.
Ah, c'est correct. J'ai allumé les sièges chauffants.
Ah, bien joué, Karine. Maîtrisez toutes les conditions. Louez le Rogue S 2026 à partir de 0,4% jusqu'à 36 mois, incluant une réduction fidélité de 0,5% pour les clients Nissan admissibles. Jusqu'au 2 mars, sur approbation de crédit, les conditions s'appliquent. Détails chez Nissan.
We begin this third hour of the show with a story about homes. When is your home just your home? And when does your home actually belong, in a little way, to everybody? We're going to take you to Westmount now, as old homes come and go. But what if you bought a home that was 200 years old, untouched, almost frozen in time? What if you wanted to modernize it, add an extension? Well, one home in Westmount, recently bought, the owner is trying to renovate, add an extension, and it has caused quite the controversy there. Many are contesting the idea of changing some of the exterior and the facade of this historic home. With more on this, we go to Dinu Bumbaru, Director of Policy at Heritage Montreal. Dinu, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
First things first, why don't you tell our listeners, maybe you could paint the picture of why this home, which is called the Good House, the family that previously owned it,
Yes.
the Good family. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit about the history of this house?
Okay, thank you. In a few words, because of course these are places, as you say, almost 200 years old. You could speak a lot about that, but let's just imagine we're in Côte Saint-Antoine, which in the early 19th century, on the 18th century, like 200, 300 years ago, was basically a rural road, probably, expanding from a First Nations path, in the old days. And along that route, a series of land were subdivided, and a developer, a royal engineer, actually by training, Moses Judah Hayes, bought some of the lot and built a series of houses for rental. And the Good House is one of them. There were 4. Now there are only 2. They were called the Metcalfe Terrace because they were actually it was the time of Governor General Metcalfe. Montreal was the capital of Canada in those days. Let's imagine that for a while. And the Governor General residence was what we know today as the Villa Maria College. And so the officers of his staff were staying in those houses. Now we're talking 1840. That's almost 200 years old. Mm-hmm. And the architect is not clearly known for the house, but there's a great suspicion it was John Wells, who was also the architect of the Bank of Montreal, which was one of the largest building in Canada in those days. So we're talking a sophisticated building, and what is fantastic about it is not just its history, but the fact that this has traveled through time, as you say, almost untouched. So it's a very unique and exceptional piece, both outside and inside. If you pass by, you'll see the gardens is also of great significance, the fence and so on.
So, Dino, I'm someone that, certainly cares about preserving history, and certainly cares that, about making sure that we don't lose special things, okay? Having said that, I also sort of can feel for someone that buys the home, feels that, hey, I'm keeping the character. I'm not, this is not a demolition job here, but I bought the place and I own it, and I want to be able to make some changes, add some modernity to it, but also keep the historical character. So why don't you tell me about your opposition here? Why is Heritage Montreal opposed to what the new owner of this house wants to do?
All right. First of all, there was a hearing for a demolition permit. Yes. So somehow in this process, you don't want to demolish, but yet you've applied for a demolition permit. So we have to go perhaps deeper and understand what's going on here. Heritage Montreal was signaled this case just recently by members of the organization. There was a formal process, and we rapidly wrote to the mayor of Westmount because we wanted to hear from I wouldn't say the horses, but the mayor's mouth. And so we received the document, and we wrote back with some recommendation to and request to the mayor to take some time to perhaps work out a better solution. And we haven't received any response from the mayor. So when we say Heritage Montreal is opposed, I mean, there's a raging debate within the community in Westmount about this building. And Heritage Montreal, we are very concerned. I'll tell you why. Because this is the first time in Quebec history that a municipality uses the power granted by it took us about 20 years to get the Quebec government, the National Assembly, to modify the act to allow municipality to get involved in acknowledging and working something for the heritage interiors in this province. I mean, we know you've been to the Rialto.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine if the Rialto looked like your usual drugstore, with drop ceiling, fluorescent lighting, and so on. Yeah. It wouldn't be the Rialto, wouldn't it? The interior is a great piece of the architecture. Well, the Rialto's protection of the interior was something it took a while to work, and municipalities across the province felt they could do a better job as they were allowed to do so, not by freezing in time building, but allowing that they have professionals and they work with the owner to work a solution. Now, the Rialto is not a private home. I agree with you. Mm-hmm. But the issue of the interior in Westmount, it was the first time, and the city of Westmount didn't do it 20 years ago or didn't do it 2 weeks ago. It did it in 2020. So it's less than 2 years ago. So when the buyer or professionals were working on this project, this was an open discussion. It was agreed that the interior of the good house would be looked after. So we're concerned about the precedent this would set. It doesn't mean the idea, and frankly, the city of Westmount, which is just the current mayor that did it in those days, 2 years ago, it's just before the election. We're not talking of a revolution in Westmount.
Yeah.
But they argued, we feel in the right tone, we have to find a way to accommodate heritage and the livability of a house. Now, how have they done that? It's not clear. Right now, the dossier is with the Quebec Minister of Culture. And that's not an evil conspiracy against Westmount. It's the standard rule. Since last year, I don't want to put too much material, but there's a bit of discussion in Quebec over the last 2 years following an Auditor General report on the poor state of the protection of the built heritage in this province.
Yeah, and this is what I want to get to. We're with Dinu Bumbaru, Director of Policy at Heritage Montreal. We're talking about the Good House. It's a house in Westmount, about 200 years old, and there's a controversy swirling about proposed renovations and modifications. So Dinu, one thing that I thought was interesting is, you said, people in the community sort of came to you and alerted you of this. Like, is it like in cases like this, if nobody alerted, if neighbors didn't raise a stink, if nobody had alerted, would this have just gone through? Or is there a list of homes, houses, properties in Quebec that if anything happens, somebody at the end of the day will be alerted?
Well, things are improving on that front. In the last year, the National Assembly amended the Quebec Heritage Act to introduce an obligation for municipality to do better inventory of the stuff they have on their territory and to improve the way they deal with demolition permit requests. In many places, demolition permit, it's almost like a tray in the photocopier machine. You just press the button and you get your permit. Mm-hmm. But for a heritage building, you want a bit more scrutiny and examination and so on. And so currently, this has been improved for all buildings before 1940. And you do your maths like me, but I feel we're very good with the Good House. It's 100 years before that date, so it's in there.
Dinu, can I ask you if you think, just because we have to wrap up, but I do want to ask you if you think, do you think what really is needed here is maybe some talk and some negotiation and a discourse here, and that maybe there's a solution that can be had with the current owners of the building? And
I think. Yeah, that's what we proposed Mayor Smith of Westmount. We said, please work out with the Ministry of Culture, which has the power to cancel the whole process that Westmount has led. And we say, please sit down with the ministry. They have professionals. I'm sure that they can work out. And the ministry is obliged now to look after two very important things. It sounds frivolous, but it's the integrity and the authenticity of the building. Is one of that's what they look after. We're sure there's a solution to this, and we even offered the mayor to, if we can be of any assistance, that would be good. Because frankly, we want this precedent to be a good one. If this is the first case in Quebec when this is going to be used, it cannot fail. Frankly,
Well,
and it's a real tangible issue. It's not just something for a seminar somewhere.
Yeah, and I do think it is a fascinating discussion because it touches on so many things, ownership, and some people do feel for the owners of this home that they, and we're trying to talk to them too as well on this one. But Dinu,
sure.
Listen, great talking to you today. Thank you for coming on the show, and hopefully we can talk again in the future.
Thanks for the interest, and let's keep in touch on this.
Absolutely.
There's many more cases coming up. The election in Quebec are coming up, by the way. We want Heritage to be on the item.
Yeah, and we've been all over that. Thanks so much. That's Dinu Bumbaru, Director of Policy at Heritage Montreal.